This is Fantasy Football Today from CBSSports.com.
Week 2 saw a lot of injuries. Week 3, we're going to see a lot of fantasy points. At least that's what we're hoping for. Welcome to an exclusive edition of Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local Sports. I'm Jamie Eisberg. This is Dave Richard. And we're going to give you some quarterbacks, some running backs, some wide receivers, some tight ends to start, and some to potentially avoid. Right. Dave, what do you think about Russell Wilson as a starting quarterback for this week?
Well, I like him this week, and I know you do too. I think we both agree that Russell Wilson's somebody who could step up and deliver another 21-point game for fantasy owners against Denver. Typically, he plays well at home. We've seen him play well at home. And I think you could see Russell Wilson continue to put up some nice stats against the Broncos. The Seattle offense is starting to get a little bit better. They used to be all about the ground and pound, and now with Russell Wilson there, he's starting to do more work. It's showing up in his stats.
Yeah, two quarterbacks often compared a lot to each other. Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick. This week it's Russell Wilson's week. Not so much Colin Kaepernick. Got a tough matchup this week going into Arizona. He's got a good history against the Cardinals, but I think with the addition of Antonio Cromartie and the way that Kaepernick looked last week against the Bears at home, I don't know how much you really want to trust him this week. I think you're going to see Michael Crabtree get contained, running game get contained. Colin Kaepernick going to be outside the top 12, a guy you can get away from. Russell Wilson, a much better starting quarterback this week. What do you think about our start of the week, Dave? Stephen Ridley.
I think Stephen Ridley is outstanding this week. Look at the game that he had last week against the Minnesota Vikings, and maybe we didn't expect it to shape out that way, but here he was getting a lot of work, 25 carries, over 100 yards. He scored on the Vikings. That was an easy opponent for the Patriots. Now here they come back home to Foxborough. This is a really good opportunity for them to lean on Stephen Ridley again, and I know that he's tough to trust, because Belichick likes to mix and match his running backs, but really what he wants to do is tailor his game plan. And he might have a specific game plan for maybe the first quarter, maybe part of the second quarter. I think running is going to be very much involved. The Raiders have been terrible against the run. I think Stephen Ridley has an excellent game. I know he was your start of the week. I think that's a great pick. But in the same division, in New York, you've got Chris Johnson, who had a good week 1. Not so much in week 2. There's a guy that a lot of fantasy owners drafted because they knew the name and they knew he had good numbers in Tennessee. Thought they'd give him a chance with the Jets. Don't do it this week, though.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup. You know, I can take that back. It shouldn't be a tough matchup. But I don't know if you can trust him when the matchup is right. I think Chris Johnson showed last week that the Jets are not afraid to get away from him, because Chris Ivory could be very good, if not great, and we saw it in the first 2 games with Ivory scoring 2 touchdowns. We know he'll be the one working at the goal line. And if they're trailing in this game, which I think is something that we both expect, that the Bears go up and the Jets are chasing points, it's not necessarily Chris Johnson working on all the passing downs. They like Bilal Powell in that role as well. So the Bears haven't exactly been beat up to death like we saw last year with their run defense. Not the greatest of units, but they're holding their own right now. And with Chris Johnson struggling, and I expect him to continue to struggle, I just don't know if you want to start him this week.
Let's talk about some wide receivers to start and sit, and one that I know that you like is Calvin Johnson. He's a stud, but on the same team, Golden Tate, and he's been close to scoring touchdowns. He's had some good numbers. Jamie, tell me why Golden Tate is a good start.
Yeah, I think you'll see Golden Tate come out and have his best game so far as a member of the Detroit Lions. They're playing at home in what should be a fun game to watch. We saw that this Packers defense has been struggling a little bit defensively. Clearly, week 1 was tough for them in that game at Seattle. And then last week, the Jets, look, they came out in the first half and punched them in the mouth, and Geno Smith was moving the ball. That offense doesn't compare to the Detroit Lions. This Lions offense is going to be able to do whatever they want against that Packers defense. And I think Golden Tate at home, I have a feeling he's going to become more of a home road type guy, because clearly that Lions offense looks better typically when they're indoors on that turf. But Tate, as Dave said, they came close week 1 to scoring a touchdown in that home game. Week 2, they really struggled on that road game against Carolina. Week 3, big game for Golden Tate.
Now, I don't like Larry Fitzgerald. I like him as a guy. He's a nice guy. But I don't know if I want to start him in my fantasy league this week. And the reason why is because his quarterback is Drew Stanton. That's a downgrade at quarterback. The matchup is against San Francisco. I think that could be a tough matchup. I know Brandon Marshall had a great game, but Larry Fitzgerald isn't doing what Brandon Marshall did last week and making these unbelievable acrobatic catches to get 3 touchdowns. Larry might get 1, maybe. And because he's a maybe there, and because we know that he's not going to get a lot of yardage with it, he's a sit for me. I don't want to start him this week. I like Michael Floyd better.
Yep, the quarterback situation, they're not good. But the quarterback situation in Chicago, very good with the way Cutler has started, and you like his tight end.
Yeah, Martellus Bennett is a great start this week. Bennett typically plays well early in the season, and we're seeing it again. He's off to a great start, and the matchup against the Jets is juicy. I know the Jets haven't necessarily been great or bad for tight ends to play against. I just think Jay Cutler's going to lean on him. We don't know where Alshon Jeffrey is. We know Brandon Marshall should play in the game, but he's not at 100%. We know Bennett's closest to 100%. out of all of Cutler's receivers, I think Martellus Bennett is definitely worth starting.
I would agree, and I would start him easily over Jason Witten, who's gotten off to a real slow start, unfortunately, for the Cowboys, as has really the entire Cowboys passing attack, because Tony Romo not putting up the huge stats that we expected, and Jason Witten struggling for the first 3 games. And the matchup isn't easy, because St. Louis, you now go back 2 years, so 34 games. They've only allowed 3 tight ends to get double digits in fantasy points. Now, that doesn't mean Witten can't have a 7 or an 8-point game, but he faced them last year, had 5 catches, 67 yards. That'd be a dream for Jason Witten right now, because he's just not playing at a very high level. Targets have been there, which you like. He will start to come around. Great buy low candidate if you can get Jason Witten cheap right now. But starting him in week 3, I don't think you do it. Niles Paul, Larry Donnell, Martellus Bennett, even Dwayne Allen for the Colts, all better starting options than Jason Witten, which is something we probably never thought we'd be saying early in the year.
Remember when Martellus Bennett and Jason Witten were teammates in Dallas, and Bennett couldn't even get on the field because Jason Witten was doing his thing, and now the roles are reversed for fantasy.
That's right. And for more, you can check out Fantasy Football Today, Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and we'll give you all the start, sit information you could possibly handle. Check out our podcast throughout the week, our columns. We got you covered to win your fantasy league. This has been an exclusive edition of Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local Sports. Stay tuned until next week, and check out Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern.